Hello and welcome to Just Onside. It's Sunday in Blackburn. Usually there's just me and OS, but we got a special guest. And usually we always bring Moggy on when things are not going too well for Spurs. So really we should have had him on every single week. But we've waited until now. There is a reason why. Obviously there's been a managerial change. Thomas Frank has been given the boot. Firstly, before I go to Moggy, OS, how are you, sir?
Very well, thank you. It's been a while since we've shot, so looking forward to this. I'm doing really good. Sunday afternoon for us, 2:28 as we speak. Sunday morning back home, but I'm doing well. Moggy, how about yourself? I see you're covered in your vintage Spurs gear here.
Hi, yes, all good. Lovely to see you two gentlemen. After a while, and like Ayub said, it's always when Spurs are in the mud that you tend to get me on the pod. But yeah, it's always nice to be on and join you and talk some football.
All right,
Absolutely.
brilliant. And that's the reason why. I mean, the reason why obviously we've asked you is that it's been a traumatic year for Spurs. I must confess, I mean, when Frank was appointed, I thought it was a really good shout. He had all the credentials, lots of experience in the Premier League. He'd done fantastically well at Brentford, and I think he deserved the chance for that step up. But it's gone horribly wrong. It's been a nightmare virtually throughout his tenure, and really who better to talk about what's happened and what's probably going to happen next than a Spurs fan? And no bigger Spurs fan than Moggy. So, Moggy, take it away. Firstly, again, just go back to when Frank was appointed. Were you happy with his appointment? But then explain where it's gone all wrong.
Oh, well, was I happy? Yeah, he had a good reputation. He did well with Brentford, kept them up, played some decent football, got the odd result here and there against big sides, with the limited budget and resources he had at Brentford. And he was talked up by the likes of Guardiola and, such as a manager that, had a big future in the game and deserved to be at one of the so-called top six clubs. So the way things ended last year with us winning the trophy and then getting rid of Ange, that's only something Spurs, could do. And Daniel Levy could do as previously been 1 week away from a cup final against City, sacking Mourinho. So,
Yep.
nothing really surprises me with Spurs and decisions that are made. But I think, the winning of the Europa League, obviously winning a major trophy after so long, galvanized the Spurs fans base, but also it was a strange one because we finished 17th in the league. So, but Ange, he did clearly. We could see that he was prioritising the Europa League because we were safe from relegation. So,
Mm.
and fair play to him. He pulled it out the bag, and we beat United in the final, and he delivered a trophy. But what's followed after that is typical Spurs. Again, like being, you'd think winning a major European trophy, Champions League football, you'd think that we'd try and kick on from that. And the appointment of Frank and one signing, I think Kudus was the only signing, I think, that we thought, okay, because the rest of the signings and I keep saying typical Spurs, it is typical Spurs. It's like we're trying to bleed in these youngsters like Tell, Odeberg, Bergval, Archie Gray. We never signed proven Premier League ready players to help us kick on, and that happened under Pochettino as well, where we were challenging for the title. We got to Champions League final. We had a squad there, arguably had our greatest player in Premier League history playing for the club in Harry Kane, and we just did not back it or try and build something around Kane to
Yep.
help us push on. And we're always shopping in like the children's section of the shop. It's like a kindergarten, and we're just hoping that something comes up. And the likes of your Deli Alli's and at the minute, Morgan Rogers and Cole Palmer's, they don't come around often, them types of young players that can come in and galvanize a team. And especially when you're in a team that's struggling to play, trying to get youngsters in there playing is difficult for them. If you're a side that's playing well, winning games, getting youngsters in there, the confidence is high. It's a bit different. But when you're a struggling side and struggling to win games at home, and you're trying to rely on the likes of Bergvall and Archie Gray and Tell, Audebert and guys like that, it's just never going to work. And I don't know if you guys saw Ange on the overlap with Neville and these guys, and he said that he wanted to sign Semenyo, Gehi, Pedro Neto, and we ended up with the players that I've mentioned, and that's just always been the case with us. And if that doesn't change, then it doesn't matter which manager we have in charge, it's just going to be the same old, just trying to be up there in the top six, try and get Champions League football, and let the club and the stadium and whatever it is make the money that it's making for the top brass at the club. And the new management structure with Levy gone and Vinay and Johan Lange in charge, and now the Lewis family, taking full control and saying that they're gonna put money in and back it and this, that, whatever. Only time will tell if that actually happens, because I really don't know, man. Because like Anne said, Arsenal can go and buy Declan Rice for 100 million, and they've not won anything recently. So why can they do it? And Spurs having won something and getting in the Champions League, why can't we go and splash money and wages on players who are going to improve the squad and help the manager out? And going back to Frank, I felt sorry for him in a way because of the injuries we had, the signings we were making, but I don't think he helped himself with the way that we were being set up to play at home, especially in the first 45 minutes of games. We were just absolutely shocking in every 45 minutes, besides the opening couple of games against Burnley and Man City. After that, it was first half getting absolutely battered. And then I was thinking, I think players are just thinking second half, let's forget what he said. Let's try and play a little bit and try and, get something out of the game, because I think he was just always trying to set us up to not lose, which is never a good thing in the Premier League. He had a good squad there. Yes, injuries, but you could just see from the style, the setup, the long balls, and it just didn't work out for him. And the fact that he was pictured holding an Arsenal coffee cup in a game, he maybe got set up there, but it became a very, very toxic environment. And I think as much as they would like to have stuck with him, fans not being at games, walking out early, booing, I think then the board take notice and think, you know what, there's something here has to change. So do I think we'll get relegated? No. This new guy, Tudor, he'll come in hopefully and make us a little bit more difficult to beat and get the club and players, rejuvenated to just bring a little bit of pride back into our season. So, it's Matt. Look, we knew Maddison was injured in early pre-season. It wasn't even as if it was like on the first week before the season. Maddison out all season. We knew that. Kulusevski, we knew he was going to be out for a long time. I still don't know to this day what his actual injury is, and he's been out a long time. We saw Son pre-season. We knew he was going. He announced it. We didn't replace any of these guys. We didn't replace Harry Kane. All right, we bought Solanke and Richarlison, but come on, man. And Son, we've not replaced Son as well. It's just not good enough from the club. Not good enough.
Just on that, you just very quickly. It's very rare that we're shooting the three of us and Leeds are above Spurs in the Premier League table. So that's the first thing I say.
Which is exactly that's what I was actually going to sort of point out, because I think you've made a fair point. I think there's been injuries to key players, and you can't have these players not available and then the club sort of doing all right. But what I think is unforgivable is a team like Leeds where I would sort of say we are a very, very average side. We're punching way above our weight, and it's unforgivable that we are above you. Albeit, I don't think it'll be the case at the end of the season. You are absolutely right. Spurs were never going to go down. But this, after 26, 27 games, it's not acceptable. But again, Ange, I'm just going to pick up on the point with Ange. Because he was obviously trying to almost like sort of absolve responsibility, as to
Yep.
say that it was nothing to do with him. I think it's outrageous. He won the cup, yes. I mean, you can't knock somebody for winning a trophy. Uh, I can sort of say it was lucky. There was a bit of good fortune, but you can't win a cup with just good fortune. But his league position with the players that he had was, again, it was unforgivable. So I think he should man up. He should accept that he
Yeah.
underperformed certainly in the league. He's obviously won the cup, but to just completely say, well, look, I didn't get the players, and it's not my fault. It's obviously the club's fault. So I think that is where I lost a little bit of respect for the big Ange.
Yeah, I agree with you on that point because he got sacked at Forest after a short stint as well.
Yep.
So
Yeah, yeah.
he does need to have a look at himself. But, some of the words that he said would resonate with Spurs fans and, people who've been following the club for a while. Yeah, what you've said is right, that, he can't, absolve himself from, all the blame because league position, home form, it's kind of just carried on into this season, and it's mainly the squad that he kind of left and Frank inherited, and going back to Leeds, watching Leeds, especially the Friday night games or the evening games at Ellen Road, it's rocking the atmosphere. It makes a massive difference because especially an evening game at Ellen Road, I'm
Mm,
backing Leeds against pretty much all of the teams that it makes a massive difference, the atmosphere and in the stadium. If the fans are behind you, the players get that little bit of a G up, and at Spurs, it's the complete opposite. We just can't seem to win a game at home, and it's just not good enough. And
It's
especially
very good.
fans paying the money. I know everybody always says, "Oh, we pay the highest
Yeah.
ticket prices and this and that," but it's right. You can't be expecting fans to pay that much money and then turning up and watching that dross week in, week out. And I think it was earlier on in the season, we were away somewhere, and Frank went onto the pitch, and Van der Ven and Spence refused to shake his hand. And, every time he went over to the away, he made a thing of always clapping the fans, whether we won, lost, or drew. And consistently every week getting booed. And it's just, yeah, I think if Levy was still there, I think this change would have happened
Yeah.
a lot earlier than it did. But I don't know, man. V9, he's coming from Arsenal. Look what Arsenal are doing now. Was he a major part of that? Who knows? Is he going to try and recreate that kind of mentality and stuff at Spurs? Who knows? Let's see, because the major decision after this is who do we bring in the summer? Do we go back to Pochettino? Do we look at somebody like Robbie Keane? Do we look at another type of manager? I really don't know what these guys are gonna do and what decision to make, because it's going to be crucial to keep the likes of some of the players that are there, because you can just see that the
Yeah.
players just look fed up with what's going on, not just the football on the pitch. I know Luis has always had a little thing about Romero, and me and Luis have exchanged messages. Me and Luis have exchanged messages in the last couple of weeks, and at the United game when he got sent off, I even said to my cousin Zaki, who's he loves Romero. Look, I love Romero, good
Yeah.
player, but even then I said, you know what, Zaki? I said he needs to go, because that's not
mm,
you can't
yeah,
behave like that as a
Yeah.
captain. You can't come
yeah,
out a week before and say
Yeah.
we're in trouble. We've only got 12 fit players, and then go and do something stupid
yeah,
like that and miss 4 games. You're going to miss the North London derby. He's yeah, and I don't think they couldn't have stripped him of the captaincy, because I think Frank wasn't in a position to
Yeah.
do that, and I
True.
don't think that's going to happen anyway. And honestly, if he goes, I wouldn't miss him, because he just doesn't bring any calmness to our play. And okay, he's a good defender. He can break the lines. But he's just a madman. He's an absolute madman.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
our best player hasn't even kicked a ball for Tottenham Hotspur. He's not kicked a ball for Spurs. Our best player is on loan in Germany, playing for Hamburg, an 18-year-old lad called Luka Vuskovic. And I'm calling it, I think he will start for Croatia at the World Cup, as this 18-year-old will probably be fighting it out with Harry Kane to be named Bundesliga Player of the Year. So if
Wow.
Romero goes, I'm more than happy because we've got a ready-made replacement. Yeah, he's young, but he's a young player that's on the levels of like your Rodgers and Palmers and Dele Alli's, and he's got something about him, this kid. So yeah, it's players didn't help it, manager didn't help it, club board not helping it. It's a mess. It's an absolute mess at Spurs.
As an Arsenal fan, always, I presume you'll be delighted, but you're too much of a gentleman to gloat
I, no, no,
in the
no,
misery
no.
of Spurs.
Listen, I'm a lad who lived in Blackburn all his life, so I don't have the kind of geographical kind of hatred, let's say, for your kind of North London rivals. I actually do have a soft spot for Spurs. I think when Eze signed for Arsenal, I remember telling Moggy that he'd have been perfect for Spurs in terms of his kind of playing style, etc. Look, Moggy covered a lot there, and he's absolutely right. I think in his introduction he talked about we only ever have him on when they're in the mud. I think was the word he used, and that's unfortunately that's where they are right now. I mean, we're now kind of 1 3/4 seasons in, let's say, and you are what you are in terms of league positions. You can maybe have a fluky season, but if you're finishing 17th and now 16th, and the only bit I would disagree with the two of you is I think they are in a relegation battle. If you look at how West Ham are at least performing, now look, they've had games where they haven't, but just recently, we've spoken about it, West Ham was showing that they've got enough about them. They should have picked up a point at Stamford Bridge. I know they made it difficult yesterday in terms of FA Cup progress and what have you, but they've got players who are playing really well. They've got one of your ex-boys, Ayub, who's in the form of his life, really performing really well. It's 5 points. I don't see how 2/3 of the season in, if you're 5 points adrift, that you can't be in a relegation battle. I think Spurs need to show that they can pick up points and wins. They've not got a manager. Yes, they've got Judah coming in now, but they really have some real difficulties right now. Home, Moggy mentioned into the crowd. I've seen many times actually the first 3.5, 4 minutes when the second half started. I see a lot of empty seats still, which is very interesting. So you're right, the crowd, it's a difficult place. If you look at their home record actually over the last couple of seasons, it's horrific in terms of the fans and the Spurs faithful having not seen many wins at all. I'm just going to piggyback off. Look, Thomas Frank, we've covered it in detail you previously as well. We all believe he's a good manager. It's probably bad timing. I think he's the type of manager that had ultimate say and control of a football club at Brentford. And when you then come into one of the big boys, and then you have Levy obviously moving away, whether that's a positive or a negative, we can discuss for another day. But the fact of the matter is, he's not then the most important person at a football club. So you've got to hit the road running. And unfortunately, he was dealt a bit of a bad hand in terms of the groceries that they bought for him, in terms of the personnel. And Moggy's right. And Ange spoke about it during the podcast. He said, look, during the overlap, he spoke about how you have to at some point take some risks. If you want to win the big stuff, you've got to at some point take some risks, was the word he used. Then he's had some big time injuries. I mean, if Madison, Kulusevski are not playing, even Kudus missing big games, who I think is a really good player, you're just not going to win that many games of football. Then the crowd's a bit uncertain about you anyway. So then you've got all of this kind of nervousness, anxiety, home and away. You want to make the home stadium a fortress. That's why you have a wonderful stadium like you do. But it's become quite, in a sense, a negative, toxic place to play. And you see that in recent results as well. So I think it's a difficult one for Frank. I think he was dealt a bit of a bad hand. I'm not going to lie, but this is the hand you're dealt when you're a manager of a, let's call it, I want to say an inferior football club, but let's say Brentford, or let's say second tier, third tier football club in terms of the upper echelons of English football. You're always going to have to prove yourself big time in that first season and a half, to get a little bit of equity with the fans, so that the fans can then give you a little bit of support. Now, Moggy made a good point about if Daniel Levy was still there, maybe he would have already been gone. One could argue, actually, if Daniel Levy was there, and Levy's done this before, so he's probably right, Moggy, but that a lot of the ire would have still probably been aimed at Daniel Levy. But now perhaps there's nobody else to focus on, so the manager gets it. And I think he's a thoroughly decent guy, Frank. I think he's trying to do the right things. I thought he dealt with the Arsenal
Yeah, I
Cup
think
fiasco.
just to come in there, I think you've touched on it with him at Brentford having the control and stuff, but with the expectations of Brentford, they could probably lose 3, 4, 5 games on the
Yeah,
bounce and then go and
yeah,
win, a couple of games, and the fans would be happy because they knew they were
yeah,
going to, stay in the Premier League and they were competing. But a so-called top 6 club or a bigger club that's in the Champions League, trying to fight to be back in the Champions League and compete. If that's happening regular basis, just not winning games at home
yeah.
or losing 5, 6, 7 games, it's not going to be
It's
accepted
different.
by the fan base. It's completely different. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, and I agree with you. And just to finish off for you before you go, in terms of the Ange interview, you touched on it, and I'm actually more in line with yourself. I watched the overlap piece twice. They obviously brought him on early because of the timing of the Thomas Frank resignation. I think they actually have a bigger piece with him planned this week. And he spoke about it, and I wanted to watch it, not just listen to it, because I think body language is important when you kind of listen to some of these pieces. You're right. He spoke about Spurs being a curious club. He was pushed on that by Gary Neville multiple times. Like, what do you mean in terms of being a curious club? I thought there were few too many cliches for my liking. It's just my opinion. Um, but the issue that I had with him is that, yeah, he spoke frank in quite frank terms about he knew he was a goner January, February. He already knew that. He already told his staff that, look, I think we're going to be in trouble, but I believe strongly that we're going to win the Europa League. We've got a great chance. And some of it felt as though, he wanted to come across as a bit prophetic in terms of the aims and ambitions that they had last season. The fact that he won, he was trying to paint himself in a positive light, perhaps obviously looking for another gig in the Premier League, which I think might be difficult, at least in the immediate short term. But there wasn't enough accountability himself. That's what I would say. Now, the league is the league. I like Ange. You know my thoughts when they hired him. I'm a big Ange proponent. But the league, I don't care about cups. I've seen way too much evidence in recent times that managers are winning cups and they're getting fired or they're being let go. The league is the bread and butter. That's where you're ultimately going to be judged. And he wasn't good enough. And we can dig into reasons and all of that. But he lost his job. And I didn't sense that he was saying, I don't even think he said it even once to say, look, ultimately, my job is to win football games for Tottenham Hotspur Football Club. We didn't win enough. And I know the gig. That means that you're in danger of being fired. I thought there was way too much focus on, well, we've not won in 40 years and those fans will have an amazing memory for the rest of their lives. And even now, I think he spoke about it where he said, even now, fans want to come and hug me, he said, which I thought was a bit cringe. But I just thought it was a bit too much. A bit of I don't know if the phrase Ayub is kind of self-grandiosing, but it just felt like he was just putting himself out there as though, look, I've been wronged and all the rest of it. But they finished 17th, as Moggy said, and there's reasons for that. But Spurs should never finish 17th. Yeah, you can finish mid-table because you can have a bad season, but you can't be finishing 17th. Same, I would say, for United, who I think finished 15th or 16th. So I thought the interview was a bit much for my liking. I thought also it was a bit. I know he was brought on. It's not his fault. You've got to give the overlap some comments, but I thought it was a bit. Spurs fans are feeling down in the dumps, and this felt a bit of a kind of a few more kicks for the club. And I thought he could have refrained a little bit if he had a bit more respect for Tottenham Hotspur Football Club. But listen, he's been wronged. He got paid off. All the rest of it. I just thought it wasn't the right. What's the word? The right touch, let's say, in terms of some of the commentary and absolving himself essentially of any real blame.
I mean, he was talking out of his
Like you
arse,
said,
really, weren't he?
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
it was a lot of nonsense.
If he is coming back on for a bigger piece with the overlap, it'll be interesting to see
Yeah.
after the comments and stuff that have been made for this little short appearance, whether he touches back on it or says anything with regards to how
Well,
the comment came across.
yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see that because
I was going to actually argue that his standing actually has probably improved because this week Nottingham Forest also let go of Daesh, so he can probably argue, look, it's not me, it's the club and the ownership. So he's probably going to play on and touch on that, I imagine.
It's sort of managers having to clean up his mess. It's too big a mess. But final word has to go to you, sort of Morgan. And quickly on this, obviously you've got a guy coming in in a temporary, well, I presume a temporary basis.
Yep.
This year, I mean, I suppose it's a write-off this season, isn't it? Really, or is it a write-off? Is there any expectation? Is it
We're
just a
gonna
case?
win. We're gonna win the Champions League, are you? We finished in the top. We finished in the top 8 of the Champions League. I think we finished fourth or fifth or something like that. No, to be realistic, look, this just it just smells of exactly the same as last season, where the league form ridiculous, but in Europe for some reason this seems to be playing. Is it? I don't know. Is it because of the style of the games that we're playing, where the teams are a little bit more open and it gives us a chance to kind of express ourselves with our like players like Xavi Simons and a few others. I really don't know what it is. Do I really think we're going to win the Champions League? No. But yeah, like Uwais has said, whether we want to believe it or not, we are in a relegation scrap. We definitely are, because, like you said, 5 points off. The relegation place is no joke in the Premier League, and we've got Arsenal coming up next game, and we lose that. West Ham and Forest win. We're bang in it. We're absolutely bang in a fight. Our players, have they got it in them to be in that fight? Who knows? Only time will tell. I look around that squad and I just see like the likes of Palhinha and Gallagher, who have probably got that fight in them. Yeah, we've got Van der Ven, but I think Van der Ven is now thinking, the way he's playing and his attitude recently, I think he's thinking that, I'm too good for this Tottenham team, and is he hankering to move away as well? And our goalkeeper is absolutely shocking, mate. He just does not put any confidence in the fans, the back four. You can't pass him the ball because he can't kick it. He doesn't come out to claim anything. Shot stopping, exceptional. Other than that, it starts from the back. And yeah, there's in the summer, whoever they bring in charge has got, a lot of the club have to, and the Lewis family have over the last 6 months have said, we are going to back the manager. We have got a war chest. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. Yes, granted, January is never a good time to, spend your money, or the better players are never going to be available because the clubs are never going to let the better players leave in January, especially if they're involved in Europe or fighting for the league. So World Cup, yeah. Let's see who we bring in, who do we sign, where do we go? Because this season is all about trying to stay in the league and give a good account of ourselves for the back end of this season. I'm not sure if you guys know anything about, Igor Tudor. Yes, I know he's had the Juventus job, Lazio job, Marseille job. He's kind of been known as this firefighting type manager who comes in for short stints and, does what he needs to do. I think
Italian Sam Allardyce.
well, he's Croatian. He's
Oh, is he
Croatian.
Croatian?
He's Croatian, yeah. So, apparently he speaks really good English. And he has got a bit of history, but we were never going to appoint a long-term manager now because I don't think any of them were available, and I didn't think they wanted Spurs and the board wanted to make a knee-jerk reaction and appoint somebody on a long-term contract right now. And we didn't have somebody like Carrick or within our ex-players who are available to come in and do a short-term role. So I think this guy was probably the best of a bad bunch that we could have bought in at the minute. So yeah, let's see. The summer's going to be interesting. The World Cup obviously throws a spanner in the works because you're not going to be signing players until after the World Cup. If we are going for Pochettino, it's going to be after the World Cup is ended, because he was never going to leave USA with the World Cup being in USA. That was never going to happen. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting next 6 months in the history of Tottenham Hotspur Football Club.
Well, from a Leeds fan, I'm sort of quite enjoying the demise, but I just think, I disagree. I think Spurs just have too much quality. I still think we're right in the mix.
I don't think, honestly, I think from watching you and from the way you guys are playing, and honestly, that the Brendan Aronson he's really impressing me, man. That lad, I know he's American, so I think he's a really good player, and you've signed some good players like Anton Stack. I know he's been injured recently. Rodon's doing a good job at the back. You replace the keeper and put the other lad completely out the picture, that Meslier. So the club and the manager have made some really good decisions and signings. And Calvert-Lewin on a free, that was a masterstroke. So you keep him fit, and in Premier League and in football, the hardest thing to do is put the ball in the back of the net. And if you've got a bagsman up front who's going to do that for you, I think you'll be all right. I think because you've got that guy. You keep him fit, and I think Leeds stay up.
I mean, we've done incredibly well. I mean, but the problem is, I mean, we're still sort of in the mix. We've got some tough games coming up.
Well, you weren't expecting to be mixing it in the top 6 or top 10, were you really in your
Well,
first? I think where you are now is kind of what you would have.
Yeah. I mean, my frustration.
I see your tweets. I see your tweets, Ayub, and then I think sometimes you do go a little bit early with your tweets because you then end up either winning the game or drawing the game. I think everything Ayub's just said in the last 45 minutes has gone out the window. Then you're backtracking on what you're saying. So I think you just need to wait until the game's finished now, Ayub, for when you start tweeting.
That's Leeds for you. That's Leeds for you because I mean, in a sense. But the problem with us is that we have to be, and it's not just a handful of players. When you've got good players, maybe you've got sort of 3 or 4 players who have a good game, they'll win you the game. With us, virtually every single player has to be almost on 100% for us to be able to compete and have a chance. But we've done fantastically well. I mean, I've given sort of Farke a lot of criticism in the past, but credit where it's due. He's worked a wonderful job, and a lot of the players that we bought are. They're not outstanding players. They're not sort of 40 million pound players. These are like sort of 15, 16, 17 million, which in the current market, I mean, that's cheap as chips. So he's done an incredible job. But I still, what gives me hope is Forest. That's the only team that sort of gives me hope.
I hope they go down.
Because of that lunatic.
Yeah, I don't like the owner. Yeah. Ever since he was held a gun to Morgan Gibbs White's back and made him sign that contract, I thought, you know what? I hope he go down, mate. I hope he go down.
Yeah. So that's what I'm hoping for. Right, on to it's been a packed week of football. I mean, since the last time we shot, there's been a number of games. I mean, I keep on changing. I sort of said that it was a foregone conclusion. Arsenal have won the league. Then I sort of said Man City are back in it. Then I've sort of said Arsenal have won the league again. I'm in that sort of moment again that it's very, very tight again. It's very interesting. That Brentford Arsenal result, a really, really good result for Brentford. And I think on another day that could have won the game. So over to you, OS, in terms of sort of how do you feel sort of now? Because I've got to be honest, this is one of the most exciting campaigns, exciting Premier Leagues, I think for a number of years, because it's sort of really exciting at the bottom. At the top, it's still, I mean, there's a lot of sort of jostling for that top 4 in terms of that 1 and 2 as well. I mean, it sort of, it's every few weeks. There's almost a change in narrative. So, as an Arsenal fan, are you still optimistic? Are you a little bit cautious?
Yeah, these are the twists and turns of a Premier League title race. Going back to last weekend, huge moment in the title race at Anfield last week, I felt, and you've got to give Man City immense credit, staring down the barrel. 82 minutes on the clock, 83 minutes on the clock, whatever it was, and you're at Anfield, you're a goal down, incredible free kick, and you're thinking at that point, fine, they might score, but that's 8 points lead with a superior goal difference. And you have to give them immense champions mentality credit that they dug in. Now, were they helped by Liverpool? Of course they were, but that doesn't take anything away from City going to Anfield. Difficult place to go, obviously an impossible place to go for many. Arsenal haven't won there in the longest time. And for them to turn that result around in terms of the belief and confidence that would give them, you just have to doff your cap to them and say that's an incredible result and what have you. And you felt from that moment on, I thought Keane went a bit over the top when he said Arsenal would be distraught and all the rest of it. I mean, these are professionals at the end of the day. I don't think you're talking about elite level mentalities, but for sure, that was a game that Arsenal would have earmarked as the one that City can't win, not at Anfield. So for them to do that, big credit. And then obviously midweek, City had the game done and dusted with Fulham, didn't they, at half time, Ayub? And then the Brentford one, I watched it. I watched it in bed. It was late, so I was like, I'm gonna watch this in bed on the old laptop. Can't be bothered being on the old sofa. And you're absolutely right. Brentford were well worthy of their point. The disappointment from an Arsenal perspective will be that even after the 1-1 goal, it was all Brentford. It didn't look as though Arsenal, apart from that Martinelli chance, which again, on such maybe chances does the title race hinge to some extent. You can imagine again the euphoria also would have felt in a game that they didn't play well. Let's be very clear that in the 91st, 92nd minute, whatever it was, Timber's going through, squares it, and you think just one good finish and you're probably in the box seat again, in terms of feeling strong and confident about your chances. So this is football at the highest level. Also weren't good against Brentford. The worry for them would be that, I still think they were worthy of a draw because as much as Brentford played well, and I want to give them credit because I think they more than merited a draw. It wasn't as though Arsenal didn't defend well and all the rest of it. It's just they're not showing their superiority in some of these games, especially in the first 20, 30 minutes of the game. And Moggy spoke about it with Spurs earlier on, where he said that, for Spurs, you've got to go out, express yourselves, because the crowd doesn't want to see a club that's just trying to, or a team that's just looking to defend. And maybe at Brentford, you can get away with that with Thomas Frank. With Arsenal, you see that a lot in terms of their first 20, 30 minutes. It's as though they just want to take the sting out of the game. They don't really run away with games early on, do they? You've in terms of 1, 2, 3, and then at halftime, you're thinking already make 1 or 2 subs. They're always massively in the game in terms of the game's in the balance at 45 minutes, which means you're always then at the mercy of a throw-in and a flick on, which Brentford, by the way, are incredibly good at. I thought they had really smart intelligence with the way they dealt with their set pieces against Arsenal in terms of a lot of activity around Raya, not giving him a free run at the ball. I thought that was very smart from the manager and the coaches. But again, also worked good in terms of how the title race is. Look, this is what it should be like. I've said this to you many times. As football fans, the three of us, you'd love for Leeds to be 15 points clear of the relegation zone and be clear so you can have a nice few Saturday, Sundays up until May. Moggy the same. I'm sure he'd love to see his club kind of start to rebound back up the table, although you would argue the next 1 or 2 seasons looks tough for Spurs now with so much turnover coming, probably personnel and coach. From an Arsenal perspective, these players, obviously, he's built this squad. I think he's an incredible manager. I think it's an incredible group of players, but they have to show. This is the longer it goes, they'll have to show and prove that they can get over the line. We've spoken about it. If they get over the line this season, I think the three of us probably would have them maybe as favourites for the title next season because just you think, well, monkey off their back. It's an incredible set of players. They're probably strengthened in 1 or 2 areas, maybe striker. Again, they could kick on in terms of just really playing with a bit more freedom and what have you. But until such a time that they don't prove it, I think it's fair and legitimate to ask the question. For me, what I'd like to see from an Arsenal is they've got a couple of, listen, they should beat Wolves. If they don't beat Wolves, then we're in a world of trouble. Let's be very clear. Spurs is going to be a big one just for the short turnaround. I think Spurs, yes, they're in a difficult moment right now, but it's still your rivals. It's still at their ground and it's a short turnaround from Thursday to Sunday. So I think there is he'll have to be smart. I think Arteta in terms of how he goes about navigating that Saliba's out as well. But I think from that moment on, look, there's tough games. I would argue Arsenal actually have the slightly trickier run in. So the 4-point gap is probably one that they will need, let's say. But if it comes down to that game, I'm not saying I don't think the title race will be defined by the game at the Etihad. I think it depends, obviously, what the points totals are going into that game. Arsenal could be 4 points clear, and if they win, they probably knock City out to some extent, if that makes sense. Equally, if City are 1 point ahead and they beat Arsenal, people will say, well, 4 points is going to be too difficult for Arsenal to turn around with. So I think the points totals matter. But there is a kind of a part of me that does believe that, yeah, it needs Arsenal to kind of bring some form into that game and beat them at the Etihad. There is something to be said about slaying the monster at their ground. I know Gary Neville spoke about that in the last couple of years when Arsenal went there for a draw and all the rest of it. Or not went there for a draw, but didn't maybe kick on in the second half. And I thought it was a bit too harsh at that point. But I think for the mentality of the club, for the mentality of the players, I don't think you want to just squeak by to some extent. I think you want to lay a marker for confidence in terms of this season and coming seasons to go there and say, we've been the best team this season and we're going to come to your ground. And I believe they can do it. I don't see it as something remarkable that I'm saying that Arsenal can go to the Etihad. But I think it's going to need that type of. You can imagine if the title race is, let's say, a point in it, Ayub, going into that game. Can you imagine? I always go back to it very
I
quickly.
hope.
That yeah, but exactly. I always go back to it. If you remember the one where City's first win under Mancini, I think it was a Monday night company header, 1-0. I can't remember a game that was against United. I can't remember a game that had as much of a build-up as that one. I still remember how I felt. It was the talk of town, Monday night, big under the lights, City going for their first one, United dominant for the last 20 odd years. It's going to be built up into that type of game, isn't it, Yub? If it's a point apart in terms of the fanfare, the noise, the build up and the tension. And I think it's going to need now, again, there's a lot of football to be played before then, but it feels as though that game at some point Arsenal may even have to win. And I'm not too against that if they have to go there and show, in a sense, their onions. So look, it's City are on the march. They've got some of their difficult games out of the way. I see them only dropping points potentially in one or two more games, and I think Arsenal must avoid defeat at the Etihad. If they don't avoid defeat at the Etihad, the path looks very difficult, if you ask me. They've got games against Chelsea, which I don't think will be easy. Newcastle got a few injuries. I think Guimaraes is out for a few months, maybe. But I see it that their path to success for this Premier League title race with 12 games to go is they've got to beat Wolves. They've probably got to beat Spurs, Moggy. And they've got to avoid defeat at some point. I know they've got games before then, I think Chelsea or what have you, but they're going to have to avoid defeat at the Etihad. If they don't avoid defeat at the Etihad, I think City will be favourites.
Moggy, just to, I mean, I don't know. I presume your worst nightmare scenario will be Spurs getting relegated and Arsenal winning the league.
You won't see me again, are you? You will not see me again.
But just what's your thoughts on? I know you obviously you're a hardcore spud, but you're also a football man. Sort of, what's your thoughts on the sort of top of the league and the league in general?
Yeah, look, Arsenal, you've got to respect what Arteta's done. It was quite similar to Thomas Frank in a way, where initially at the start, Arsenal fans were not happy with the style of play, the way things were, signings that were getting made, but they stuck with him, and now he's built a squad, and especially a defense and midfield that I'm quite envious of. Uwais touched on it there about, does Arteta have the cojones to go to the Etihad and try and win the game instead of not losing the game, which has been the case over the last few seasons, where when he's played the top sides, you kind of see that he would rather take the draw and not really setting his team up to win when they are more than capable of going to Etihad, Anfield, and winning games. Now it'll be interesting to see what happens there. I really hope City do push them and win it, and I don't want to see Arsenal winning it, and then that will ask, because I think, like always mention it there, because if they win it, then it looks like it could be something for the next 2-3 years, where we're looking at a little bit of Arsenal dominance, especially with Pep potentially leaving at the end of the season and management change at City. If they don't win it, Arsenal, that would be very,
Yeah,
very demoralizing for the players,
for
Arteta
sure.
himself, the club, because they've been so close in the last couple of seasons. This season, they're leading from the front, and then when it really matters, if City pip them, yeah, I would like to see that happen, because I think that would be very, very demoralizing for the players going into the summer. Yeah, they've got the World Cup to kind of get their heads off that, but then having to come back the next season and think we've got to do this all again. So it is very, very important for Arsenal to kick on, get these results in the bag. So when they are playing City, it's going to be a very interesting game. But we also need City to keep winning as well. And even though with the signings and stuff they've made, they've not really been
Mm.
pulling up trees. Yes, okay, they've been getting the results, but it's not the Man City of old. It's not the Pep of old. You can see that it's pulling a little bit of strain on him, and especially when a manager is now more concentrated on talking politics and world matters in press conferences and stuff. You think, is this the beginning of the end for him? Because it's a bit strange. Okay, we enjoy and we like some of the stances that he's taking and what he's talking about, but it just, to me, I think this is the last dance for Pep, and hopefully he can leave with City as champions.
Yeah, it's interesting. Sorry,
Well,
you just very quickly. It's interesting you say about the stances that he's taken. He obviously mentioned in one of his press conferences Sudan as well, which is an interesting one, which would perhaps indicate that this may well be his last season because
Because
that was a
the oppressors are his paymasters,
well,
right?
I cannot subscribe to that. I mean, we need more information that you the rest of it,
Seen as
but
though the country that you're in, is that why?
yeah. My visa,
There'll be a
my
knock on your door.
yeah,
There'll be
yeah.
a knock on your door
There's
soon, right?
conditions on his visa.
yeah, I was gonna say my visa
He's
is a
sold
fragile.
out.
It's a fragile.
He's on
It's a
the list.
fragile. it's a fragile thing. But no, very quickly, Moggy, just before you go, Moggy's right. I mean, the word he used is demoralizing, and I agree. I concur. That's exactly how it would be in the early couple of seasons when he made a big recovery. If you remember, they finished fifth outside Champions League spots. Moggy, you remember that famous game when I think Spurs beat them 3-0 to essentially to gain Champions League football. Arsenal finished out, and then they pushed very close. I think City the very season after. And, you feel like you're a bit ahead of the game, so to speak, or ahead of your time. But this feels like Arsenal's time. Let's be very clear. This, in terms of the makeup of the squad, the age profile of the squad, and all the rest of it, the players that they've got, the elite level players that they have. Let's be honest. Most of these guys are going to be starting for their countries in the World Cup. Absolutely. You talk about, if you just look from one to, I mean, I know Raya's got a difficult job in terms of Spain, but he's a top goalkeeper. Let's be very clear.
Yeah.
But 1 to 11, 1 to 18, 1 to 20, you could argue, these are all going to be playing for their respective clubs and big countries in the World Cup. The worry would be how many times can even a coach like Arteta, which I think, even objectively speaking, I think we all accept, if we're not trolling, that he's a good coach, he's a top manager. But how often can he keep going to the well in terms of the mental strain that it takes to keep fighting for big titles? And you can tell he talks as an elite level manager in terms of, we embrace the challenge. He's not scared of it, but he's going to think, this is taxing. I mean, this is incredibly taxing season in, season out. You then start to think about your Gabriels, you start to think about your Declan Rices and others who are at the peak of their powers that might think, I'm giving them good years. And listen, I'm not saying they'll all leave. Of course they won't. But I think there'll be some surgery there.
Let me ask you this, Ois. If they don't win the league this year and Real Madrid come knocking for Arteta, does he leave to go Real Madrid?
Look, he's got some links to Barcelona, so I'd hope not. I'm hoping Jurgen Klopp might just take that job instead. Listen, I think it's a worry. I said for the longest time that my biggest concern would be Arteta, Barcelona, clubs like that, because I think he's of that ilk. I absolutely do. I don't believe just because he hasn't won leagues that he's not of that ilk. I really do. I think he's pushing that club forward. I'd be worried. Yeah, absolutely. You don't know, again, how much of a strain that he would take, and this feeling of constantly coming second, what the club players would think. Now, some of these players are committed.
This season, it would be even worse because, like I've said,
your favourites
from the front.
you've
led from the front. They've been favourites.
Most people would accept they've been the best team. So when you've been the best team, the argument is, well, you've got to seal the deal, right? And Ange spoke about it with Spurs. He said the famous phrase, Moggy's been hit with it for the last 20, 30 years, the Spursy comment. That's what Arsenal are facing right now. This idea, well, you bottle it. Yeah, you'll do fine until Jan, Feb, but you bottle it. Now, how much of that is true, how much of it isn't? But you're right. Look, they're in pole position. And to cross the finishing line, it can't always just be, I mean, if you look at the 2 titles Liverpool have won, they've won them at a canter, but that's given massive credit. But it's not always plain sailing. You've got to win these games where you're 1-1 and it's the 75th minute, and maybe you're at the Etihad and you're 2 points behind going into that game, and it's 1-1 and it's 70th minute, and you've got to now start to pour it on because you think we're probably going to have to win this game of football. And Arsenal have to show to the footballing world that they can cross that line and face that challenge head on. So, yeah, listen.
I think that's where the difference is. At Klopp's Liverpool would go to Etihad and they would go to win the game.
Yeah.
That's where
absolutely.
the difference was,
Yeah, absolutely.
Has Arteta got it in him to set his team up to go to the Etihad and try and win the game from minute one? Whereas you knew a Klopp Liverpool were never going to sit back. They were always on the front foot, whether they were at the Etihad, at the Emirates, whoever they were playing. And then, like you said, when they won the leagues, yeah, they were never setting up to lose. Now, does Arteta have that in him to do that? Does he play it safe and try and get the point and get out of there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of games, just very quickly, there's a lot of games to be played before then, so we shouldn't probably talk about City too much. I'm just saying, if heading into that game, the title's in the balance, which you would hope it would be, although Arsenal will hope it's pulled. But if you look at the City fixtures, I think that game will be of significance, let's be very clear. You would hope that Arsenal can meet that challenge head on. The biggest issue, like I said, that they've got is, I still think defensively they look solid. I think Declan Rice has been at the peak of his powers this season. I saw an Arsenal fan calling into Talk Sport complaining about Declan Rice, which I thought was incredible. I watched him every single game. Very
must have been a Spurs fan.
I think he was an Arsenal fan, but I watch him. I watch him closely every single game. He's a footballer at the peak of his athletic powers. He's an incredible.
Exceptional midfield player. Exceptional midfield.
Honestly, without him, Arsenal are not in this position. He's running left and right, clearing all sorts of situations up. But let's see. Hopefully, listen. I think the title race, as I told you, I don't think it was done and dusted ever. I think Arsenal are going to have to win some big games in highly pressurized leverage situations, last 15, last 20, that kind of stuff. But hopefully they can cross the line, much to Moggy's chagrin. Where do you stand? How do you see it now with the gap down to 4 points?
As a spectacle, I mean, I've sort of alluded to it before. It's been absolutely fantastic. I've really loved the Premier League this year. It's been full of drama, full of excitement. Exactly what I mean. We keep on saying it's the best league in the world, and you want it to have this sort of narrative and stories. I think with Arteta, I think there is no doubt he's an outstanding coach. But I will always, until he wins this league, I'll always be a critic of him, because I think the squad, I mean, and Moggy sort of said as well, this has been quite a stuttering Man City side. It's not been a fluent side. It's not been free flowing. They've sort of almost like they've sort of by default sort of got some results. It's the Liverpool game as well. You wouldn't sort of say it was an outstanding performance. They won the game. They won key games because they've got outstanding players that will probably win games, but it's certainly not a machine. Unlike Arsenal, who are a machine. What he has, I mean, he's responsible for building that side, which is an outstanding side. It's one of the, I mean, I almost sort of look at them, and I've said it before, I think they're the best club side in the world. To be only a handful of points away from Man City at this stage, where it's a city that is nowhere near the city of old. Guardiola, I sort of slightly different stance to Moggy. I like the fact he talks about politics as well, but it is his last season. He's certainly not the Pep of old. So the fact that Arsenal are only a handful of points away, that game is going to be absolutely pivotal. I hope that in that game, it's not a case of Arsenal have sort of stretched the lead too far. No. I hope it's a case where it's a game which sort of is the absolute pivotal game. If City win, they go above. If obviously Arsenal win, they obviously be sort of above Man City. I want it to be in that sort of that sort of narrative, because it will be absolutely outstanding. But Arteta has to win. I think if he doesn't win this league this year, then really, I think, I mean, I'm going to go as far as sort of saying then he really then needs to either walk, or I think Arsenal needs to look at somebody else, because you can't keep having this every single season where he's kneeling. He can't just be the kneeling man every single year. At what stage? Because I think Moggy touched on it. Will they be able to pick themselves up if they don't win the league this year? So maybe perhaps a fresh voice perhaps will be, and somebody who doesn't put the handbrakes on. This side, really, I mean, you talked about it. First 15, 20, 25 minutes, they're a little bit conservative. They should be going at it, winning the games in the first 25 minutes.
Yeah. Just look, listen. I disagree with you strongly there. Let's cross that bridge when we come. Let's cross that. Let's cross that bridge when we come to one thing I would say before our final discussion topic is I watched Saka when he came on against Brentford. Listen, he's been nursing an injury. He didn't look right. I think they put him on because they just needed a goal, and he hardly got a touch. There's been a little bit of scrutiny if you read the papers, the media about Saka this season. I think he's been underwhelming. Let's be very clear. He's had a bit of a stop-start season, but if you want to be a big player, and listen, he's getting paid a top whack now. He's still young. And I think he's going to start for England in the summer. I've got no issues about that. I think he should start for England in the summer. And I think he's a top footballer. He gets a lot of double teams, triple teams because of the way Arsenal play very cautious football. So midfielders are often sliding across. You'll see that against Spurs if he plays that game where they'll probably slide across Palhinha, Gallagher, in a sense, over to that side to whoever's covering him at left back. But he is a top footballer. But this is where Arsenal need him to start defining some games, to start putting. There's this discussion, right? Like you've got to start putting your imprint on these games, whether that's with goals, whether that's with assists. Yes, he's having good games and he's putting crosses in and all the rest of it, but you've got to start defining some of these games. I look at some of the players around the league, and it's interesting. As good as Arsenal are, they're an incredible outfit. I think they're the best team in the league. But I think to myself, man, if they just had Mbeumo this season, I think they win the league. If they had Fernandes this season, they're 100% winning the league. Like, and I know that's not a fair way to look at it, but this team still needs to show that come down the stretch, they can define these games. They can produce moments where you're putting your imprint on games in terms of getting that first goal. I'm not talking about when it's 2-0 and getting the third or 3-0 and getting the fourth. I'm talking about making the difference in these crunch situations, in these crunch games. So I put a lot of pressure on Saka because I think he's honestly our best offensive player. He's had an underwhelming season, but there's all to play for. And it'll be interesting to see how much he can contribute in the next 2-3 months.
Right. I still, I've still got to stick to my guns. If he doesn't win this league, he's got to go. Right.
That's shocking of you, but carry on. It's par for the course with you.
Right. We've sort of touched upon it, or at least Moggy sort of touched upon sort of Guardiola, because he's put his head
I didn't
above
say
the
I wasn't.
parapet.
I didn't say I wasn't happy with what he's saying. I was just saying that's
Stay in his lane.
No, that's the look of a manager that's probably
That's
thinking,
great.
you know what, it's my last season in the Premier League. Let me just say what I want. Because usually, managers, they don't touch on politics or, world matters in press conferences. And recently, even when it's not in a press conference, if it's somewhere else where he's been interviewed, he's more and more talking about world matters and politics and what's going on in the world. That's all I was saying. Not that I disagree with him. I agree with everything he's saying, and the fact that he's got such a standing in the game. People listen and they can't really hit back at him because if he was a rubbish manager failing, everybody would be like, "Listen, mate, stick to football." But
absolutely,
the fact that he's Guardiola and he's standing up for certain matters that are going on in the world, and that now they're pressing him on. What do you think Ratcliffe said on his comments? And so now it's like in every news conference they're going to be like asking him about world matters. And I think Guardiola's the type of guy who doesn't really care, to be honest, because he knows his standing in the game. He knows his standing in the world of sport and just in the world in general, and the respect that he has. And that was just my thing. I don't disagree with what he said. I just think it's just smelling of somebody who's in his final moments in the Premier League, and he's just doing and saying what he feels, to be honest.
I mean, he's always, I think perhaps he's been a lot more vocal, but he's always made sort of the odd comment, and he's always been on, in my opinion, the right side of history. But we'll do a little segue because you mentioned Radcliffe. And it's something that I did want to talk about as well, because I think he made some very inflammatory remarks. I think remarks that he was very aware of what he was saying. I mean, he's now sort of backtracked slightly, but I think it's something that a lot of people sometimes do. What they'll put out a statement, knowing full well exactly what it's going to cause, the ripples that it's going to create, and then sort of a few days later just go back to it. But really, what happens? It's a ploy that news outlets used to always do. It's a sensational piece. It's out there. It gets lots of reaction. A couple of days, there's a retraction, or maybe there's an amendment. But really, it's the first story that everybody is aware of. This is it's in the news at the moment. Billionaires seem to be ruling the world, which they perhaps always have done, but now they're much more vocal. And Radcliffe came out with a comment which is, in my opinion, absolutely outrageous, scandalous, and he knows exactly what he was doing. This swine knows exactly what he was doing. I mean,
he actually I think the interviewer actually asked him
again,
colonize, and he was like, yeah, colonize. So yeah, you're right. He did know what he was saying, and from what I've heard, what the interviewer said after, that I think, there was guys then from Ineos in the background who were, then saying, listen, I think this interview's had its time, because I think they knew what he was saying and what he had
Mm.
said is going to cause the problems. And look, it's the obvious thing. Everybody's obviously saying it. For him to say it's a bit rich, using that word rich as a billionaire, but for someone who doesn't pay his taxes and, is an economic migrant, as you call them, in a different country, then calling out the immigrants in this country who are contributing 17 billion pound plus to to paying tax, which is yeah, it was very strange for somebody who's in charge of one of the biggest football clubs in the world, to be coming out with comments like that. It makes you wonder whether some of the players that are playing for the football club, who are so-called immigrants in his eyes, what do they think, and where do they stand on it? It's unfortunately, these views on immigrants and colonization and not slightly, but like far right type views are becoming more and more prevalent in this country. And as Ayub said, they're getting backed by billionaires. It's like Elon Musk. If you look on Twitter, he's reposting, and he's saying that yes, Ratcliffe is telling the truth, and he's so there is a bigger picture behind it. When there's stuff going on way above our pay grade and our heads that we can't control, and narratives. But it makes you wonder why these guys are saying these type of things, to divide people in this country, a country that colonized, a third of the world. I think it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, very strange, very strange.
Well, I don't think it's strange at all. I think it's there is I mean, there's a wonderful animated sort of uh, like a still of it's a character that looks like Rupert Murdoch. It's something that I share quite often. It's a obviously, albeit a very wealthy businessman with a plate full of cookies. There's a sort of blue collar worker across with a plate with one cookie, and there's obviously clearly somebody who's an immigrant with a plate which is empty. So the billionaire with a plate full of cookies is saying to the blue collar worker with one cookie, keep an eye on that guy. He's after your cookie, whilst he's got a huge plate of cookies. And that really it's a case of divide and conquer. I mean, you've got various characters, and they're actors. It's like Tommy Robinson. He's an actor. He's on a payroll to create divisions. And this is where, going back to what Pep's saying, I've always been frustrated with top sort of international, especially in sport. I mean, obviously there are certain individuals where perhaps for us to make a comment it's economic suicide. We're not in a position where if we make a comment, I mean, I've been on the receiving end. I've made certain comments, and it's been costly. It's cost me my job, and I'm not so. But Pep Guardiola, he knows he can make a comment. If they sack him, gets another job. I've been very frustrated with players like Mo Salah. These are all players who are iconic players, where they can make a comment. It's not going to affect their career. They'll still be in demand. The silence of these individuals is frustrating. That's why I am absolutely what Pep is saying at this moment. I applaud him, because he needs to call out characters like Radcliffe, and I'm absolutely frustrated. I hope, and I know, but I'm certain nobody will. But Man United players, some of the Man United players with obviously immigrant sort of backgrounds, or if they are economic migrants, they need to make comments, because they're in a position where they can do. Ordinary folk like us, we can't make a comment, because it's there's too much at stake for us. For these guys, obviously, they can make these comments. So I'm really, really annoyed, not just with comments that Radcliffe makes. I mean, these are racist. He's a racist. He's a brazen racist. He's an absolute hypocrite. You touched upon it. He's been in Monaco since 2020. And he sort of put out some figures as well about the level of immigrants. It was
Wrong.
just made up figures. But again,
Yeah.
this is yeah, it's intentionally done, because it plays to an audience. It's creating division, and it's almost like sort of deflecting from who the real villains are. The real villains are, I'm not going to say every single billionaire, but these are the people who are creating divisions. I mean, it's all sort of self-serving. They're doing it to create obviously a deflection, and I just wish more sporting sort of professionals would come out and make a comment. So that's why one of the reasons why I want Pep to win this league is for what he's done. I mean, he's been on the right side. He's he's put his head above the parapet. I'll say that again, when so many others haven't. I mean, he was in a conference as well, so he's not just saying it in press conferences. He's actually taking time out. He's a busy man. These sort of coaches are busy people, but he's gone out and obviously he's gone to a convention,
Yeah.
a conference where he's obviously talked about sort of not just Palestine, but obviously other sort of injustices that are happening in the world. Now he could so easily, as a multimillionaire, he could sort of just keep quiet. Gary Lineker, same. He gets vilified. I mean, the amount of comments. I mean, I go on social media. He puts in a comment. The trolls, the absolute sort of bile that is sort of put towards Gary Lineker. But fair sort of play to him, respect to him. I've got so much admiration for these sorts of characters who are obviously doing something which is in the end, I hope they'll be viewed as heroes. But I think Ratcliffe, I hope there's some consequences, but from players who are making they'll comment on what he's saying because this is outrageous. I mean, I have absolute. I mean, I was quite sort of. I mean, I always sort of think, even though I'm a Leeds supporter, Man United is obviously considered scum if you're a Leeds supporter. But I've always thought that a healthy Man United sort of makes the league even better. So I was actually quite relieved that Carrick was sort of turning the tables. But now I want them to lose every single game. As long as Ratcliffe's there, I want them to lose every single game.
Well, I'm not trying to cause any trouble with podcasts that we are competing with, like the overlap. But I wonder if Neville and his mates will bring
Yeah,
this comment up on there because we know where Neville's bread is buttered. Even though I think Neville politically kind of stands with the working class man, but when it comes to maybe talking out against Ratcliffe, it'd be interesting to see whether he brings that up because it's Manchester United. It's a club they're always talking about, and this should be a subject that they should
yeah.
be talking about
Yeah.
on the overlap. So it'll be interesting to see whether that they bring that up in the next week or so.
Absolutely
Yeah.
good point, Moggy. Good point.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, just very quickly, you make some good points about it's a very important topic, isn't it? And you're right. The soundbite was one where Moggy rightly points out that the interview actually had to clarify what he meant by this kind of phrase and this kind of tagline headline of kind of colonized by immigrants. You're right. He had his statistics all wrong. I think the UK population mid-year 2020 was about 67 million as opposed to the 58 million that he spoke about. Irrespective, I mean, facts and are never, I guess, the strong suit of these guys were just trying to simply just create a stir. It was the backdrop of this, which led to, in a sense, the Brexit vote many years ago as well. This kind of sentiment about essentially immigrants coming over and taking over our jobs, so to speak, or at least that's how it was portrayed. And we saw what happened with that. I think what you're seeing in the world as well, Ayub, at large, if you look at, in a sense, what's happening, the leader of or the supposed leader of the free world, obviously just in the last 7 to 10 days, posting that video on X, depicting Obama and Barack Obama and Michelle as kind of apes and what have you, and then trying to, he didn't even apologize, did he? He walked it back. Supposedly a staffer got fired and all the rest of it. I just think what you're seeing right now across the world, obviously there's another major story happening in the US with regards to files being leaked and a lot of information being released about the elites all across the world, actually, in terms of some of the no good that they've been up to. And for sure, that'll be, I imagine, the story for the next 3 to 6 months in terms of the release of that. I think what you're seeing over the world right now, Ayub, is a need for everybody, I guess, to become independently educated about these topics. There's a real need for that. There's a lot of, like you said, misinformation, whether it's TV channels, radio channels, whatever it may be, the various mediums that are feeding you a lot of information. If you look at some of the news and stories about the fight against TikTok, there's a lot of underlying stories about that, about what's the main pull behind that, about the need to control channels like that, about what they're showing, platforms like that are showing the true story of what's happening in certain places around the world. I just think there's a lot of talk about free speech and JD Vance coming over to the Europe and talking about this, and you look at what's happening in the US. I mean, completely hypocritical So I just think there's a real need right now in 2026 and beyond, with all the shamelessness that's going on, with the protection of the elites, which is slowly now starting to be unmasked and, let's say, brought to the fore, which I'm all for, absolutely. Obviously, even kind of the British monarchy and all the rest of it. I think there's just a real need, like I said, for everybody. And it's a dumbed down society, let's be very clear, because we're force fed so much rubbish, unfortunately, in the media, that we must educate ourselves, read, and spend time seeking out knowledge on what's happening in these different countries and different places where there's a lot of, let's say, injustice and what have you. And listen, just very quickly to finish, do I expect a lot from? I mean, I'm sure Pep's really grateful for your support, Ayub, given that you've suggested that he's a rubbish manager for the last 12 to 18 months and what have you. But so I'm sure he's very grateful to have Ayub Patel's support. But look, the fact of the matter is, do I expect much from our sporting superstars about injustice? I don't. I just don't. It's just too much money for them to. I just don't have that expectation. It's not whether it's right or wrong. I just don't have that expectation. Pep, you're right. He's probably starting to speak up now because he's thinking I'm on the last few holes now anyway. I'm going to be leaving soon. But again, as a society, and as everybody, whether it's in Europe, UK, wherever they are, even in the States now, I think it's just so important just to start reading about some of the things that are going on and not just taking and accepting some of the rubbish. And it's right in front of our very eyes. It's not hard to find some of this stuff. Again, for me, the big deal, I just remember when JD Vance came over to Germany speaking about freedom of expression and all of that. And I just think it is so hypocritical. Like if you look at some of the things that are happening in the States. But anyway, I'll leave it there. But it's definitely a hot topic. And it will be very interesting to see if it's brought up on the overlap and if Neville, Keane doesn't really get too involved in these things, but Neville has taken some political stances, what his stance was about flags being raised and all the rest of it. It'll be very interesting to see if he tackles that or that's if he can get Ange to shut up, obviously, talking about how great a manager he is, but let's see.
Right, on that sort of quite emotive subject right at the end, I think we'll call it a day. So as always, a pleasure. And Moggy, absolute delight and pleasure to see you and hear your thoughts, not just on
I'll probably
Spurs.
see you guys when we've just survived and stayed in the Premier League next.
Well, it depends if we've survived as well. No, that's the key. That's the key.
Yeah, just very quickly, one name from the three of us. Who do you think's going to be the Spurs manager come summer?
Well, I will leave you till the end, Moggy. I think it will be Pochettino. I think next season.
I have a feeling it could be Carrick. I know it's an outside choice, but I could see how the cards could align where it could be Michael Carrick, obviously affinity with the club and what have you. But I'm going to go with that as a bit of a left field choice, especially given.
I was going to sort of say.
No, especially because of what I think that squad profile is going to look like over the next couple of years. I think that could be a nice fit, to be honest.
For me, I think Arteta after Arsenal sack him for not winning the league.
I didn't win the league.
Honestly, I think it's going to be Pochettino. I think is it always a good idea to go back to your ex? Who knows? Spurs are going to find out. Let's see.
Careful. I was going to say carefully, but we'll leave it there.
Well, I think it's like they can't go wrong. I mean, they've tried everybody else and it's not worked. So really, I mean, it's what harm is there going back to Pochettino? Yeah. Right. Okay. But a pleasure to have you, Moggy. I'm sure we'll have you in the next few weeks as well. All right.
Okay. Pleasure to be invited, guys, and always nice to see you as well.
All right, okay. And the audience, as always, a pleasure to have you. Take care. Enjoy the rest of the day and see you soon. Ta-ra for now.